Hi, this is Dave with the weekly market recap. It is Sunday, September the 9th, and I am doing this video to close out the week for Friday, September the 7th. Doing this video a little bit late into the weekend on Sunday night. I wanted to start out and take a look at the stock indices, starting out with the daily chart of the Dow futures. So if we take a look at the Dow futures, we've broken above these highs around 13,200. And just a quick note, I apologize, I didn't have a chance to do a video last week. So it's been 2 weeks since I've done one of these videos. So last week, really not much to tell. Except that we retested the highs and we pulled back to support. I was expecting to pull back down to somewhere around these levels, 12,800. We didn't quite get there. We found support in and around 12,962. And you can see now we're above these levels, these highs at around 13,200, I believe. So this was the major resistance, 13,200. We pushed above here. And now we're right back up to, back up in and around these levels here, around 13,300-ish. So that is the immediate resistance, and it looks like we're just chugging higher into who knows where. Let's take a look where. Let's just take a look at this and see. Now we don't have any targets except to say that, we've been looking at some levels in terms of retesting the highs, pulling back, and potentially pushing through the highs. We're about 100 ticks in the Dow futures above those highs. So looking at maybe some potential targets, I'm going to draw some fibs here. From, if we look, let me just back up a second, and I apologize, I'm a little unfocused because it is, Sunday night. So let me just back up a little bit here and take a look at this pattern here. This to me looks like a cup pattern, a standard cup pattern with a potential handle here. So if you look at this, you've got a high, right? And then you've got a sell-off, and then it builds a base. It comes right back up to this high. And then it sells off and it forms, a little bit of a handle, and now it's potentially going to push through this level. So if we look at it from that perspective, you've got a potential cup with handle pattern taking shape here. What's driving it? Well, what I believe is driving it is all of the quantitative easing, all of the unlimited kind of backstop that Europe is put into or announced that is putting into the market. You've got money flow, and that money needs to find a place to work, and it seems to be finding it in the stock indices. So this, I believe, is all as a result of the U.S. dollar declining, and as a result of basically quantitative easing, stimulus, money flow. So I know that's a really simplified explanation. But I like to simplify things, and I think that's basically what we're looking at. So if we look at this from a technical perspective, which is what I like to focus on, so you've got this high, you've got this kind of cup pattern back up to the highs, and a pullback, to form the handle. So looking at this, you could kind of ascertain, where might this be going. Let's take a look at some fibs from this high to this low. And instead of looking at a retracement, we're going to be looking at extensions. So the 1272 extension out of this level comes in and around this area here, 13,555. Will it get there? It's possible. 13,998. So we're looking, the 1618 extension of that move brings us close to about 14,000 in the Dow. Is that achievable? I think it's possible. Just a quick reminder, these videos are not meant as advice or, for any reason except for educational purposes only. We're looking at the market from a technical perspective, and these are some of the ways that I like to look at the markets to see where it might be going. and just to get an idea of what's at play or what's in play. So if we look at this as a cup with handle pattern, and we look at an extension, from the high to the low, looking at a Fibonacci extension. This is something that we're going to be covering at the next meetup at the end of this month on September the 30th, 2012. So we're going to be covering some of the ways that we look at Fib analysis, and this is one of them. So we're looking at potential targets up here because we don't really have any immediate price resistance in the background. So this is a potential target we're looking at, 13,000 and a half, 14,000 based just on looking at, different Fib analysis. So, the market looks good for a potential move still higher, and I think there's probably a lot of news in the background to drive this. Now, we have a heavy news week coming up this week, so when the market opens Monday, Tuesday, we're going to see how things kind of shape up and then reevaluate. I think we have some pretty heavy news coming in Wednesday and Thursday. So this week will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if we push to new highs or, if we get another sell-off first. But I mean, I'm still bullish on the market until this market structure of higher highs and higher lows changes. So at this point in time, we had a really big update on Thursday. Okay, we had a really big update on Thursday, and we closed close to the highs, which was really bullish. And then you can see here, Friday we closed out the week, close to the highs with a very tight day. And, the price action is really far away, or pretty extended, from support. So it'll be interesting to see how things shape up next week, but I'm still bullish on this market. Let's now take a look at the sister indices and see what they look like. Okay, let's take a look at the S&P futures, and if we look at the S&P futures from the daily perspective, you can see we broke above these highs, and you can see, like, relative to the previous price highs, the S&P actually looks stronger than the Dow futures. So the S&P seems to have kind of taken over the lead. Everything here looks the same but stronger, and looks bullish. So now if we take a look at the NASDAQ futures, I'm not going to pause the chart here because I'm sure it's probably going to be much the same. So let's take a quick look at the NASDAQ futures. We have pretty much the same story. We have this cup pattern, not so much of a handle that formed here. It just kind of pushed right through, closed close to the highs, and it looks much like the Dow looks. The S&P looks the strongest, and then the Dow and the NASDAQ look pretty much the same. Yeah, the NASDAQ maybe looks a little bit, let's go back to the NASDAQ, maybe a little bit stronger in terms of where it is in relation to its past price history. So now let's take a look at the transports and see if they're kind of confirming. What is the symbol for the transports? Transports? No. Okay, I just had to pause the video there. Let's take a look at the transports here. Now, the transports, I mean, the indices are all kind of moving together, but the transports are really still kind of stuck in this wedge, and they kind of did a fake out to the downside. They're not even in the middle of this wedge. They're coiling up, looking like they're going to be, they're building up energy in here. They're coiling up, looking like they want to break out of this wedge at some point. But they're not really confirming, so that's a bit of a red flag to me. I'd like to see some kind of action outside of that area there, outside of this wedge forming. So let's take a look at the same markets from the Darvas squeeze perspective, and we'll incorporate the weekly chart analysis as well to get a better idea of where we might be going from here and what's setting up. Okay, let's take a look at the Dow futures on the weekly chart from the Darvas squeeze perspective. You can see here in our radar screen here, we have two potential signals on the Darvas squeeze that are setting up. So on the daily chart, we have a squeeze with a potential breakout. On the weekly chart, we have a fired recent long breakout 5 bars ago, which would have been 5 weeks ago. So if we just expand out the weekly chart, I think this one is the interesting signal here. If you look at the weekly chart looks pretty bullish. You've got this this cup pattern. It's almost like a cup with handle pattern here on the weekly chart. It's a little bit easier to see here, denoted by this Darvis box. You've got this cup pattern. Here's a handle, and now it's coming back up. And you can see here everything's looking bullish. The MACD's bullish. The squeeze fired to the long side. So this Darvis squeeze, the break of this Darvis box with this squeeze recently firing. So now you've got this Darvis squeeze long, okay, taking place. And this is pretty decent signal. That's I thought we were going to get a pullback down to the support area, down to about 12,800. That didn't happen. No problem. It did find support, and then between the 8 exponential and the 21 exponential moving average on the weekly, and now we're pushing back up through these highs. You can see this is just an automatic generated signal based on some software that I developed up called the Darvis squeeze. And I've been using this for a while now. It just kind of gives me a heads up on which way the market wants to go. I don't necessarily just, blindly take breakouts, because this is a market, understanding its personality, that it likes to kind of push through, pull back to support, and then, it kind of, it's not a momentum type market. It likes to pull back and then follow through at times, if it does follow through. I mean, it doesn't always follow through. So from this perspective, though, I'm looking for overall direction, and we've got a signal that fired incidentally right at the previous resistance of 13,200, which was a key level we've been talking about as the major resistance for a long time. And this is printing targets above 14,000 in the Dow future. So this is really interesting. I've been watching this set up for a few weeks, and now that it's kind of fired and it pulled back and it's pushing back through, this is a key signal that I'm looking at for future direction, because the weekly charts tend to trump the lower time frame charts. So this is one of the ways that I use a top-down approach, and one of the ways that I use higher, multi-time frame analysis, looking at higher time frames for overall market pressures, overall direction. So the only concern I have is this kind of divergence here in my trending indicator, where we're breaking the new highs, but the momentum is lower than the previous momentum at these highs. So that's a little bit of a red flag to me. I'm not, hugely concerned about it, but it is a little bit of a caution, cautionary tale to me. So let's take a look at the daily chart. Let me just clear this off. Take a look at the daily chart and expand the daily chart of the Dow out. It fired a short signal here, and I thought we might follow through and get a bigger pullback down to 12,800. It didn't follow through, found support. Now it's fired off a long signal. Targets are around 13,600 on the daily chart. So now you've got a confluence between the daily chart in the long direction and the weekly chart in the long direction, with these signals kind of in tandem at different levels, but in tandem. So this is a pretty big heads up. I'm definitely more bullish than I am bearish at this point in time. Let's take a look at the S&P futures from the same perspective. We've got a breakout of the Darvis box on the weekly chart, but not a Darvis squeeze. But on the daily chart, so this is the weekly chart over here. On the daily chart, let me just expand this out, and you can see that we fired a long signal around 1425, and it printed a target. If we extend this box out on a one-to-one basis, let's say the distance of this box projected higher. This is, this software is just set to project that out when the signal fires on a one-to-one basis, would bring us to 1455 in the S&P futures. So again, this is not advice. This is not a signal service. This is for educational purposes. But this is kind of what this is kind of what these signals are telling me in terms of, potentially where we may be going in the S&P futures. So this looks bullish. Let's take a look at, let me just see here. I'm trying to keep this video short, and hopefully I will keep it fairly short. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. There's no, we've got Darvas box breakouts in the NASDAQ, but there's no Darvas squeeze signals. And if we look at the transports, we're just stuck in the middle of this range on the weekly chart, and there's no signals to speak of except, we're in this really elongated squeeze on the weekly chart, multi-week squeeze. So we could get an interesting move off of this at some point. This market can only stay quiet for so long, so it'll be interesting to see how this kind of resolves itself, and if it comes into line and confirms, from a Dow theory, the Dow index. So that's all I have for this week. We're going to be, we've got a heavy news week coming up next week, going into Monday. We're September the 10th already on Monday. So we've got a heavy news week this week. Going to be just looking at what's setting up and taking the market day by day. We're living in pretty interesting times here in these markets, and some pretty unprecedented stuff happening, in terms of events around the world, monetary stimulus, and different things. I'm trying to keep my watching of the news to a minimum, even though I'm really curious as to what's going on, for the simple fact that, I'm a technical trader and I like to look at the markets from a technical perspective for the most part. So from that perspective, let me wrap up this video, and that's all I have on the stock indices this week. Good trading, and hope to see you on September the 30th at our meetup. We'll be focusing on looking at different aspects of Fibonacci technical analysis, and or we'll look forward to seeing you at the next week's video. So good trading, and until then, take care and be well.